Thanks again, Laura, for joining us. I think this is a great opportunity. I mean, we have the third birthday of ChatGPT coming up soon this month, and these last 3 years, I think, have been quite exciting for all of us in different kinds of ways. And especially in the research in UX community, we've been talking a lot about how to use AI. What does it mean? What is it changing? And now we've all had a good share of time to learn, to explore, to do research, and especially you and the Nielsen Norman Group have done a lot of research and comparisons in terms of tools and processes and so on. So we've seen everything from AI being hyped and this is going to change everything, this is going to change our jobs, up to like AI slob. And I recently read about the research paper about qualitative data analysis, which was the recommendation of the authors was not to use AI for qualitative data analysis. This was in the academic setting.
Oh, that's my recommendation as well, by the way. We'll get into it. Or use it very carefully. We can talk about that a little later. How about that?
Yeah. So I think this is the key idea of the session today. Like, we have seen these extremes, but where do we draw the line? How do we make sense of it? And where's the line between this is a useful application of AI and this is something we should be very careful about or probably not to? So what is your take on it?
Yes, I mean, we are somewhere on the spectrum between it's going to kill us all and we absolutely, you have to adapt or die. And honestly, both of those extremes seem very violent to me, and I don't care for either of them. It's a tool, and it's actually I started out extremely skeptical. So that is where I came from. I am still. I'm skeptical about everything. I always like to say that sometimes I'm cautiously optimistic about things, which is as optimistic as I ever get. So I am cautiously optimistic about certain applications of it. But, when we talk about being careful with it, I think we have to be careful with all of it. And we need to use it in the places where it makes sense and not use it in the places where it doesn't. And for example, there's a lot of folks pushing all sorts of things like synthetic users and digital twins. And I have seen paper after paper saying, yeah, maybe not so much. That's no. But then a lot of things that we've been testing it for on the planning side of things and on the coaching side of things have been fairly helpful. And, and as I'm seeing in the chat here, a bunch of people using an AI assistant for taking notes. And, that can be helpful for folks as well. So there are pros and cons. So we can get into the details. I'm not going to leave it. Yes. I'm not going to leave it at it depends. I promise.
Yeah, perfect. And I think you mentioned two important things here already. One is sort of differentiating the sort of hype and the social media activity and what people post and so on from the actual evidence and what we're seeing and what is happening in a day-to-day, right? And I think it's easy to be carried away with all of that's happening, and maybe also this is creating a lot of FOMO. Maybe people, have their managers with expectations in terms of how to use AI, and this is not an easy situation to be in, right?
Folks are being forced to use it. I mean, and that's one of the reasons. So I have been teaching this class for 7-8 months now, and other folks at my company also are now teaching the class and adding to it, which is really great. But I've been teaching this class for a while. I've been doing a bunch of research with folks who are using it in all kinds of different research activities. There's a bunch of work going on at NNG. One of the great things about being at NNG is that there's a whole team of incredibly smart people who just do this research for me, which is it's so great. They're figuring this stuff out. They're using it for design. They're using it for research. They're trying out the different things. We can't try out every different product, of course, because there are a billion of them and there are not a billion of us. So, but it is fascinating to me because we are hearing from people who come to our classes who are saying things like, well, my company is forcing me to use AI, or, there are some people who are it's on their year-end reviews, like, did you use AI enough? And it's not like, did AI help? Did AI make things faster or cheaper or smarter or better? It's, did you use the tools that we gave you? And I mean, I think that's a reasonable thing to track, to know if the tools are useful and if people are using them, but not to not to review somebody on like that. Who knows if I can do everything that I need to do without it, maybe that's better. Who
Yeah.
knows?
Yeah, I agree, and I've seen several also CEOs and founders post, these memos that they
Oh, yeah.
share with their
We're
teams
AI
of talking.
first. We're AI first. We don't hire anybody who doesn't have AI art. Oh my God, I get so tired of it. Sorry, go on. I didn't mean to
Yeah,
interrupt.
yeah. I mean, I agree. And I think also from a UX perspective, I mean, we've always been about focusing on the problem that we're trying to solve, understanding the problem first, and then find the solution. And now this AI thing, like AI first thing, is like almost having it backwards.
It's not almost
Um,
having it backwards. That is exactly backwards. That is
yeah,
you have hit on it precisely. That this is they are very much a solution in search of a problem. And there are some problems that they solve fairly well, and that's great. But it's not I it's not useful actually in every part of the research process, and it is actively harmful in certain parts of the research process if you are not very much the human in the loop who is tracking and keep it like making sure. The interesting thing is that sorry, I just want to I want to get this part out. AIs are really good at making answer shaped things, right? They're really good at making insight shaped things. They're really good at making report shaped things. And if you just do that, if you just go and say, okay, take all of these transcripts and give me insights, it will give you something that looks like insights. And that's what a lot of people, and a lot of people kind of leave it there and they go, oh my God, look at these, look at all these insights. These are wonderful. What we have actually done is we have, we have a lot of old research at NNG, and we have a lot of new research at NNG, and we have a lot of people who are very much trained in the entire process. And it's really great because we can take one of our old projects where we have human insights and we have human moderation and we have all of this, and we can do it again with AI, and we can actually compare and contrast. Here's what the AI gave us in terms of, for example, insights. Insights. I'm going to do big air quotes around that. Here's what the AI gave us. Here's what, Maria, our head of research, gave us. Which is better? Well, let me tell you, that it really falls down when you start to look at the difference between its output and actual good human output in many cases. In other ones, not so much. It's much closer, and sometimes, so for example, doing drafts of discussion guides. Very fast. And if you give it the right input, which is always the key, I don't want to blame the user. I don't want to say things like, oh, if it didn't give you the right thing, it's your fault. There's all sorts of issues, but things like helping you write discussion guides, helping to coach you through better moderation techniques. There's all sorts of things where it's actually pretty useful. We get into that in the class, so I don't want to give away all of the things we use it for, but we do use it for
yes.
things.
But you told me that you have this sort of three categories, how you classify AI in terms of how useful it is for certain applications. So I found that super interesting. Tell me more about that and give me some details.
I mean, there's very much this stuff where it's like, yeah, that's great, right? Like the AI, transcripts and things. Like, again, it does make up things, it does hallucinate, it does lie a little bit, but if you're using some of the tools that are pretty close to the research, it's very good, it's fast. If you're still doing human transcription on this stuff, it's probably wasting a lot of time, right? It's going to save you a lot of time. It's really good. There's some things that you want to use with caution. Again, or things where maybe it's going to be a little bit less good, but it might be worth the trade-off, or it might be a lot less good, but it still might be worth the trade-off. One of the things that we were looking at is some of the AI moderation stuff, which we sort of look at that and we're like, well, is it going to be as good as a human moderator? Oh, goodness, no. Oh, absolutely not. It is a good human moderator is going to be so much better. But if the option is using an AI moderator or not getting to do research at all because you can't get the person scheduled, or it's, you need it too fast or something, if there's something in the way of it, it's better than nothing, right? It's better than not doing research. It's not but it's not better than humans. And then there's a lot of stuff where we're just like, yeah, don't do that. That's bad. Like letting it do all of your analysis and synthesis is just bad on so many different levels. It's not just bad because it doesn't produce nearly as good of insights. Well, it doesn't really produce insights at all, but it doesn't produce nearly as good of results as a human would. It's also bad because when you think about it, if you're actually a researcher and you're working with your team and you have a bunch of videos that you want to go in and you want to analyze, you can do a watch party with your team and you can discuss those. You can discuss what you've learned, and you can do actual analysis and synthesis, where you're clustering and you're coding and everybody's going through and they're saying, what they're seeing. And not only does this produce really good insights about the people that you have spent all of this time interviewing, it builds consensus on your team about what we have actually learned. Turning that all over to, an AI is like just kind of saying, just give me the final report. And I mean, look, we all know what actually happens to the final reports, right? Like what they get read like 20% of the time. They get paid attention to somewhat less than that. So it's not the point isn't to make a great final report. The point is to build consensus with your team. The point is to actually watch users doing a thing, or listen to users talking about a thing, or observe the environment of your users and understand their needs and their context and their problems and their behaviors. And AI doesn't do any of that. So yeah, I'm very much on the side of look at what you're trying to do and ask yourself, is this something that AI can actually do? Or is this something that AI can fake?
Yeah.
Because it's real good at faking stuff. I will say
yes. Yes, convincingly incorrect is one of the terms that I recently learned as someone kind of describing what AI's output is usually is like. And I've had several occasions myself where I've had like, oh, this output this looks good. Like if you read it, it sounds good. It's like coherent,
so
it's like smooth. And then you look at
Yeah.
it again, you're like, oh, maybe it's off here and there. And then you read it again, you're like, hey, where does this making sense? It's just like,
Yeah, one of the fun tasks that I like to give people who are fairly new to it and sort of don't know when to believe it or not. A fun test that you can do is you can go in to any of the different, ChatGPT, Claude, whatever you want, any of the different AIs, and ask it to give you in very close detail, or in very small detail, tell me what a person who does my job does all day, right? Ask it about you and your job. So, I'm a principal user experience specialist at, NNG. What do I get paid? What's my day-to-day job like, right? And it's funny because it will get some things very right. Especially if it's like, I'm a senior user researcher at, a Fortune 100 company. Fantastic. It'll tell you, it'll get some things really right. And then it will just get some things wildly wrong. And some things will be very, biased towards the US. I remember I was in one class and somebody did this exercise and they came back and they said, well, it told me that I make twice as much money as I actually do. And it turned out that they were in Europe and that they was looking at, Silicon Valley salaries. And we were like, well, it's very optimistic about your salaries. But so look at things like that and kind of see which parts, and then ask yourself, if I was asking it about somebody that I didn't know as well as I know me, would that, what, would I believe that? Would I think that was true? Right? Or would I have to, or would it be the kind of thing that I would then use to go out and maybe do some actual research with that kind of person?
Yeah. 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 That's a nice exercise, and also sort of reality check in a way, I think, to understand.
Well, especially if you want to use it for like desk research or anything, you really have to sort of test the boundaries of it. Like, is it, because it's going to tell you, it's going to give you something very clear and that sounds very right. And if you don't know where the boundaries are of it being wrong, I mean, you'll get what you get.
Right. All right. So I want to come back to the three categories that you had. And the one category is the type of tasks where AI is actually really helpful and useful. You mentioned, for example, creating study guides if you provide the right input. Transcription, of course. I think we've been using transcription for many years, and I think that's also a very obvious case. By the way, someone asked for a transcription tool, so Condens is one of the transcription tools that you can use.
There you go.
Not only for
one.
that, but also for analysis. Had to bring this one in. But also for just search on text, for example, we felt like it's very useful. Like I remember there was a quote about a certain topic. I don't know. It would take me like an hour to go through all of the transcripts from this past project, and then you can just use AI for like a natural language type of search where you're like, find me all of the quotes where people talk about issues with the navigation of the app or something like that.
This was actually shared with me by a very senior principal researcher that I know, who I love. She's I don't know if Michelle's out there, but she's great. She told me a story. She was like, okay, so here's where this kind of thing might be useful. We used to work together at a big company, and she would always say, look, we never ran a study on change version, but we didn't have to, because every single time we talked to an enterprise user, they would tell us how much they hated it when we changed the UI, right? It was in almost every conversation that we had. They say, you guys keep changing the UI and we can't stand it because, it's breaking all my workflows and all this stuff. But like, we never ran a study on that because we were running studies on other things. And so what better natural language processing does is, like you said, it allows you, instead of having to remember, oh yeah, I think that one person said that one thing, and then going through the video and trying to find it, you can actually say, you can go into a lot of these tools and you can say, give me every instance where people complain about, the UI changing, or where they complain about this dashboard changing, or where they're upset about this kind of thing. And they'll give you pretty good results. Will they be perfect? No. Will they find every single instance? Absolutely not. If you have a really big research repo, though, if you have, like we had, thousands of old videos, will they do it a lot faster than a human will? Oh my goodness, yes. I mean, this is the kind of project that you maybe used to give to like, an intern, and they would do it. They would spend all summer going through hundreds of hours of research. And now you can do it in, minutes, an hour, depending on how big your thing is, and again, it'll give you a lot of really good stuff that you can then go through, and you just go through the little clips and you can say, oh, this is a great clip. This is a great clip. This is a great clip. Suddenly you have a meta-analysis report on change aversion that you can use to show your senior leadership and say, hey, could we maybe not do this anymore? People hate this. And I have a lot of evidence that people hate this.
Yeah. Yes. This is a great example. I mean, very illustrative again. And I think this takes away a lot of pressure from researchers as well. I mean, in terms of preparing the data as well. I mean, many of us have been going through, transcripts, highlighting things, tagging things, and so on. And this may still be useful in certain cases, but I think that the pressure to do that is lower in a way, because you have these search capabilities.
I will say it is still important. Let's have a little argument about it.
Yes.
Personally, I think we should still go through, and we need to tag, we need to code. That is where we actually do the learning. I think now, do we have to go through them, 5 or 6 times like maybe we used to? Sometimes the AI can help make that shorter. What we've seen when we've sort of run these tests, it'll save 10 to 20% of the time, right? Now, like I said, it's very good at going through older stuff that you wouldn't go back through and retag and recode. So that is one thing. But like, you're running a study, you want to do analysis, like still do your synthesis and analysis as a human. Use the tools to like help you keep track of tags. Use the tools to help you, like maybe it suggests a good tag, or maybe it suggests, you've already highlighted something, maybe it suggests an old tag, so you don't have to remember, oh yeah, did I already create a tag for this? That's really good for people like me who have, like 100 different codes, and and end up making half of them are somehow the same because I forgot that I made 3 transcripts ago. Anyway, so things like that, very useful. But I'm more excited about the sort of meta-analysis of data that wouldn't get analyzed otherwise, because again, it's from another study 6 months ago that's still relevant in some ways. But anyway.
Yeah. Yes, I agree. I mean, and this is what I meant with like the pressure. I mean, this, usually if you run interviews, there's like so much in there, and you have like a research question, you're focusing on that obviously, but there's like so much other stuff in there that you wouldn't necessarily, tag and then highlight or anything.
Yeah.
And
You can
suddenly,
pull that out later if you remember. Yeah. I love that. Yeah,
and
that's
this becomes
fantastic.
much more accessible. And
it also prevents doing new research. One of the things that I'm actually look, we all know that user research is it's a little turmoil in the industry right now. I'm gonna say it's teams are getting cut. I get it. Like everybody is being pressured to go really fast, to do things like we got to do it faster, got to do it with fewer people, all this kind of thing. Well, one of the ways to do that is to not run studies if you focus on the ones that you have to do, like focus on the new stuff, focus on the stuff that you need to learn. But if you have that information already, and you can find it over a bunch of old studies, fantastic. Use that information. As you pointed out, there's so much good stuff in research that doesn't get tagged, that doesn't necessarily, that just kind of gets ignored because it's not part of the study. Fantastic. Make sure that you're still using all of that. Mine that for other data. You can also mine other types of things for it. You can quickly go through old NPS scores or old customer service tickets, right? It's useful. That's all good information, and otherwise you might just kind of never see it.
Yes. Yes, this is perfect. I think especially in the context right now where there's pressure on researchers and the pressure to be more productive. And I think this is a good case. We're seeing many of our customers who are building Condens as a repository now. They're actually benefiting a lot more from all of the data that they had. I mean, they did before AI definitely as well, but now they're reaching out to us and say like, hey, we can actually use the existing data in a much better way. And they are also bringing in other data sources, not only the active proactive research that they're doing, but also some, customer conversations that are happening in sales teams or in review, product reviews, app reviews, these kind of things, where there's like actual valuable information in there, which suddenly becomes accessible, which before that wasn't a thing because we didn't have the time to go through all of that.
I will say that one of the things we have found is the tools that are sort of what we call closer to the actual data, right? The ones that are pulling, the ones that are specific to research teams and that are pulling in data and that are sort of built for that, and where you actually store, the place where you store the videos and those kind of things, those do tend to have better results than just like taking all of your transcripts and feeding them into ChatGPT. Aside from the ethical considerations of doing that, if you haven't gotten consent from the people in those, or you haven't cleaned them of all the PII, keep in mind, right? Some of this is not neutral. So I do not recommend things like, just take all of your raw transcripts and feed them into ChatGPT. I mean, unless you have consent from your participants to do that, or you have very carefully gone through and cleaned all of your transcripts, which, I mean, if you've already gone through and cleaned all of your transcripts, maybe you've also tagged them and maybe you don't need to do that. So just keep in mind that, yes, it's a new technology, but it's not consequence-free to do this stuff. And we do have to be careful of participant privacy and all those kinds of things. So the actual research repositories that are built to do that are going to be in a much better position, I think, to protect that. Hopefully.
Thanks for doing our marketing job, Laura. That's great.
I'm not, by the way, I'm not taking a side here. Like I said, we do not recommend tools because we can't, because there are too many and they change so quickly. But that is a thing that we have found about research repos and research specific tools versus sort of the base models. The base models do a lot of cool things, but we also have found that they just hallucinate a lot more.
Yeah.
They're terrible at timestamps.
Yes. And we also get that question, like, how does Condens compare to like ChatGPT or Notebook LM or other tools? And obviously the things that you mentioned are absolutely right, that purpose-built tool for research can do a lot more things. One of the things that our team spent quite a significant amount of time on is making sure that there's evidence for each AI output that is provided. And this is like, it sounds like such a basic thing to have in research, but it's not something that is given in the other tools, to make sure that there's a trace of evidence back to the source, and you can actually verify, was that what the person said, or was that what was actually happening? And yeah, of course, there's a lot of other things, including anonymization, participant management, and so on.
Yeah, there's I will say there are some things that you can do in the base models that's interesting, that isn't on the analysis side. Like I said, the analysis side of things is really where we tend to say, be very careful. Use it to, you're going to speed things up a little bit, but this is not like a just hand it all of your stuff and let it go to town. I don't care how good your prompting is. If you actually look at the human, generated insights, they are better. And also, humans are the ones who sort of make those connections back to the actual product. So I don't want to go too much into that. There are some really interesting, fun things, though, that you can do just with the base models. One of the things that I enjoy doing, especially for new folks, is, again, if you need to clean your transcripts before you do this, but it can give you feedback on your moderating technique. It can tell you, especially if you give it your research questions and you give it a transcript, it can tell you, hey, you could have followed up on this question, or, oh, I think you didn't get to everything in your discussion guide, or, oh, you asked a very leading question there. It's actually pretty good at recognizing those kinds of things. Also, things like your discussion guides. It's good. It's sort of a good coach, which is nice, especially for those, for new folks or research teams of one, who are kind of like, you're writing up a discussion guide and you're kind of like, oh, did I get to everything? Or, just here, tell me, what do you think? It's pretty good at giving you some feedback on that. Or the other thing that it's kind of fun as, you can use it as a sample participant, not for analysis purposes, but for like pilot purposes. Or if you want to train a new moderator, this is always my favorite. Look, we all do research here, all of us in this virtual room. We've all had that participant who's like only going to respond to you in monosyllabic grunts, and we also have the one that kind of goes off on a tangent for days. That's me. So you can actually ask it to model those and get some practice doing your discussion guide, which is really nice. I will tell you, 30 years ago, when I was learning how to do this stuff, that would have been nice if I didn't have to practice on real humans. I'm sure I traumatized a few of them. It certainly traumatized me. It's hard.
Yes, I agree. I agree. And that's a nice kind of way of thinking about it. Coming back to the analysis, I feel like you're saying we should be careful in terms of using AI, or at least using AI for the entire process all at once. Is that what you're saying? And
yeah, yes. Use it. You can use it for bits. And the way I like to look at it is, as with any tool, don't start necessarily from the tool first. Actually look at your process and kind of say, okay, what are the parts that take me a very long time? And is this something that is safe to use? And then do some experimentation, right? Like try using it and compare it to the results that you would get if you didn't use it. And look, I'm not going to say that we're never going to make trade-offs that make things slightly worse. We do all the time. I mean, it's human, right? We satisfy. So you need to ask yourself, is this good enough for this particular case, right? If I can do this 100 times faster and it's maybe I missed 10% of the stuff, is that okay? Maybe, right? Would this be the kind of thing that I would just hand off to a junior researcher? Okay, great. Maybe AI is gonna do an okay job. Although do be careful with that, because having junior researchers do things like that is where we get senior researchers. Haha. Yeah, I always get so nervous when people are like, we're just replacing the juniors, and I'm like, great. I'm hoping I'm not going to be in this industry in 10 years because we're going to have a big gap.
Yes. Yeah, I agree, and this is a whole different angle to that whole topic. Yeah, I think that makes sense. And this is also the way we see it. I mean, we've been looking at it, especially from the analysis side, as Condens is very active there. And we also see that like this end-to-end one-click type of analysis report is not going to cut it because there's too many variables in there. And there's, first of all, a lot of context required, a lot of knowledge about the organization, about the goals, about what's important, what's not important. And then also like several steps in between of the analysis where like errors can accumulate. So our thinking was AI can be useful in like scope tasks for things like, hey, here's something interesting, find me other quotes where someone would talked about something
Yeah.
similar.
Find those other quotes so that I can decide if I want to tag them that way. Perfect. Yeah. Perfect example of something. Yeah.
Or like getting started on a whiteboard, like having a
Mhm.
bunch of quotes there and like start with an initial clustering so I can then
Yep.
look at it and like don't have to start from zero, but like rearrange it and work
Yeah.
with it from there.
Yes, I have 200 tags here. Start clustering them for me so that I can look at them and kind of go, no, but try clustering them this other way. And it's very quick and it can do all that. Yes, things like that speeds things up tremendously. Very nice for that. Both of those are, I think, good analysis tasks to use for it and very specific to the actual user research process. Indy Young said something interesting on LinkedIn a while ago, which was, if you ever see anybody talking about getting insights directly from transcripts. This is a paraphrase, but if you ever see anybody talk about getting insights from transcripts, that person may not really understand research very well, because that insights don't come directly from transcripts. Insights, as you point out, come from noticing emerging patterns and themes that we then apply to all of the things that we know about the product and the user. And we start to have those little sort of aha moments, right? That's an insight, that little aha moment where you're like, oh, they're doing this weird thing. And oh, I think that relates to these other things that I know about. If you're just handing a transcript to an AI and saying, go for it. It doesn't know what's interesting. I mean, it doesn't know anything, right? It's a pattern matches, right? But it doesn't know what's interesting. It doesn't know necessarily about your user or your product. So keep that in mind. That is one of the reasons why you can't just kind of go, yeah, do the whole thing for me and write me a good report. Although they are helpful at helping you write reports because they are good at writing things.
Mm-hmm.
But they are not good at writing reports. There is a difference. They are good at changing reports from one thing to another.
Yeah. So it's good to have at least these human checks in between and sort of providing directions and providing guidance in where to go. But then AI can be vulnerable and like speeding things up and automating things that would be very tedious and time consuming to do in between and see it like almost like a ping pong match between AI and human and so on.
Yeah.
Great. And then I think to finish with the analysis topic, I think you mentioned something interesting in the beginning, which I want to iterate on is a lot of it is also about the collaboration, right? To bring in your team, to do this to create alignment and not to mistake research just for the answers. It's not only about the output, right?
Right. Our job is not to generate reports. Like that's not the job of a researcher. If you think that a job of a researcher is to generate reports, I'm sorry, that is not the point. The job is to understand user needs, understand business needs, and translate that into, stories that we can share with our teams and that we can actually affect change in the product that benefits users and the company, right? Like that's the point. And part of doing that, which is a thing that we have learned over many years, is that co-creating insights, everybody watching videos together or, actually letting people ask questions and those kinds of things, those build consensus among folks. It's important, right? Like think about the difference between, watching somebody, go through and look, I'm telling you all of this, right? And you can kind of nod your head and go, yeah, that sounds true. But like really think about your own practice. Have you had better results from writing up a big PowerPoint deck or a big, Word document and handing it over to, the stakeholders going, here? Or have you had better results when people have actually come and been part of, those watch parties or those analysis sessions where, you're all clustering together and you're all doing this stuff together? Personally, I have had much better experiences with the latter. I find that at the end of those sessions, people go, oh yeah, this is what we need to build, right? This is the right thing. Look at, and like later in meetings, people are like, oh, do you remember when that person said, about this thing and it wasn't that interesting? And, you start hearing little quotes from users and that's part of the job. right?
Yes.
Socializing that stuff within the organization and making sure that people hear directly from users. Don't give that up to the AI. The AI doesn't care. It
Yeah.
doesn't love you.
Yeah. I think sometimes I feel like there are organizations or teams who see like research as an answer machine, basically. They ask a
Yeah.
question and then they want the answer back. And then you ask a
Validate this
question.
for me. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, sometimes it's maybe okay. Like if it's like a very specific thing, like a usability study, and then let's say a very concrete thing, maybe there's like a concrete, slightly objective answer. But I think for most cases, and especially if it's more like strategic type of research, it's not about the answer, right? As you're saying, it's about the process, it's about the alignment, it's also about the new questions this triggers and what makes change in the organization. So
Yeah.
I think
And
AI
that's a
kind of
really good
shows us.
point.
Right?
Oh, sorry. I was going to say that's a really good point. There are and like I mentioned before, there are certain things that you would turn over to a junior researcher, and there are certain things that you absolutely would not. And a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about here is that the big, the ethnographic stuff, the contextual inquiry, the big, important, foundational understanding user needs, understanding user context, actually seeing their environment, those kinds of things. AI doesn't do any of that. AI looks at transcripts and reads words. That's not
Yeah.
that gives you a third of the story at best in those kinds of things.
Yeah.
There are other kinds of research, basic usability tests, where you're pretty sure that something's going to be okay because you did good research beforehand, but you got a new thing and you want to usability test it, make sure it works. Things like that. It tends to be a little bit less hard, right? It's not less important. It's still important to do, but you're not necessarily going to have that depth of knowledge and understanding
Yes.
coming out of it. So,
Yeah.
safer to use AI on the things that are a little lower stakes. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And where there's less, well, yeah, where you can
Yeah.
take more of the evidence and the statements and quotes and translate into something
Yeah.
useful, where in generative research, that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah, you do have to be careful though. Remember, anytime you're analyzing this stuff, with a few exceptions, there are a couple of tools that now claim that they can like see what's going on the screen or like read body language, which I don't trust them. I barely trust me to read body language. So it's you got to be really careful with that. Remember, almost all of these, they're reading the transcript. And if you've ever been in a user research session, you know that people can say one thing and do another, or say one thing and mean another. And if you are just reading the transcript, you are not getting the whole story in a lot of cases.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. And maybe to finish up on that topic of team alignment and so on, I think this can actually save time if you do that once, especially if you start a new project, a new, I don't know, product direction, or a new, even a new product. Doing this once as a team together, this creates so much alignment, and also the mental models in all of the people's heads that will require less, alignment and research and so on down the road, because this was that was happening in the first place. So I think it's even if even people question like the efficiency of that, I think it's even more efficient in the long run.
Don't get me started. But research takes too long. Yeah, you know what takes a really long time? Correcting things after we've gotten them very wrong because we didn't do research. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that hasn't changed. AI has nothing to do with that. That's just basic, research hygiene that we should. Oh, I don't know. Maybe we should understand what we're building before we build it. Maybe we should understand who we're building it for. I don't know. This is crazy. This is,
Yeah.
I know it sounds wild, but yeah.
Yeah. And in that sense, I think it's nice because AI really has made us rethink what the actual value of research is, and has sort of, made us think hard about that, and or sort of, remove some of that disguise that may have been there in the first place.
Yeah.
So I think that's
Well,
a nice thing.
I've been thinking about what research is for about 30 years now. So I will say I have not changed my opinion because I am too old to change my opinion. But no, I think like I said, I have changed my opinion on some of the things. I started out super skeptical, and I have identified several things that I would strongly recommend folks do, and that will save them time and will make things easier for them. But yeah, I've also identified a lot of things where they are promising the world, and I do not think they are delivering.
Yes, and I think it got better. I think last year it was really, really bad, especially also in the research industry, where we've seen claims that were like, that's bold, or
That is
worse.
certainly a thing that you were suggesting. Yeah.
But I think it's slightly getting better. We're still seeing very like
Fingers
hyped
crossed.
marketing
I don't know.
messages.
I think it depends on where you're looking for information. I think there's still a lot of ridiculous hype. Yeah.
One more small topic I want to touch upon before we go into Q&A is, and this is something we've been seeing, is that we have been seeing more democratization of research recently, especially with AI helping to streamline some things, and maybe also reducing the, I don't know, fear of people also to get started and then feel like, oh, this is so much work, and AI potentially can help make it easier. What's your take? I don't want to open the whole like democratization topic. I know this is a big thing, but especially in terms of in the context of AI, how you think about it. We've seen many designers and product managers doing more of the research and being more involved. What's your view on that?
So I'm excited that product managers and designers want to do research or can. I'm excited when they can do it. Again, I'm just going to say there are things that I think it is totally safe for a fairly well-trained product manager or designer to do. I am technically, the funny thing is I'm not actually technically a user researcher. I'm technically a designer. I learned to be a designer. But I always did my own research. So to me, designers doing research is just like, well, yeah, how else would we know what to design? Like, I don't understand what the difference is, but I understand that that is not the case in much of the industry. So that's fine. That said, so I'm happy that they are doing more of it. The place that I see AI actually helping to democratize research is, again, a lot of budgets getting cut. I hate that part of it. But it is true for a lot of folks who don't have any control over that. And if you are in the position where your job as a super senior researcher is to help all of these teams do research, having things like the ability to very quickly generate and then edit a discussion guide or a research plan based on a bunch of, just like thoughts that you give the machine along with, a template of here's what a research plan looks like here. That can be really fast. Like that can be super helpful. I talked to one senior researcher who that was kind of his thing, right? He was in charge of helping all of these teams do research, and he cut hours off of his time doing just kind of like generating real basic stuff. So that's great. I'm a fan of making life easier for the people who are in these positions where, oh man, I have to support all of these folks. For people who are doing like research ops, even for research teams, if you can automate parts of your recruiting, if you can automate again parts of creating these sort of basic documents and templates, wonderful. Again, it takes somebody, I think, senior or at least who knows what they're doing to edit them to make sure they're not wrong. This is one of the things that I get a little worried about is people saying things like, well, this allows, junior people to go off and act like a senior person. No, it very much doesn't. It just allows them to be wrong faster. And you kind of see this when you see how wrong it gets some things, and it takes a senior person to kind of come in and go like, oh, that's not the right question to ask. No, you don't want to ask that question. No. But again, much faster for the senior person to quickly generate something with AI, actually check it, edit it, and send it off, then that's much faster than having to generate everything by hand every single time.